We are living through the twilight of the American empire, a period defined not by grand battles, but by the quiet, desperate whimpers of abandoned allies. What is unfolding in the Pacific right now is not merely a diplomatic spat. It is a systemic collapse of the security architecture that has held the post-war world together for 80 years. Japan, our most pivotal ally in the region, the unsinkable aircraft carrier of the East, is furious, and they have every right to be. They are watching with a mixture of horror and cold realization as the United States, under the erratic and transactional regime of Donald Trump, consistently allows itself to be outmaneuvered by Xi Jinping. The sentiment in Tokyo is palpable. Japan feels abandoned. Japan feels that Donald Trump does not have their back. They are realizing that in the eyes of this American administration, alliances are not bonds of blood and shared values, but temporary arrangements to be sold for a quick profit. Trump simply fawns over Xi Jinping. It is a grotesque display of submission disguised as diplomacy. He does whatever Xi Jinping wants. Consider the issue of technology, the very lifeblood of modern sovereignty. Trump gives Xi Jinping and China America's most highly classified, top-of-the-line AIH-200 chips. These are not toys. These are the cognitive engines of the future of warfare. And what is the response from Beijing? It is one of open mockery. Xi Jinping responds, essentially saying, "Thank you, I will take some of those chips, but I still want to protect Huawei and some of our internal businesses." He offers nothing in return, absolutely nothing. It is a unilateral surrender of strategic advantage. And the tragedy is that Trump doesn't even realize he's being played. He views the world through the lens of a real estate deal where a handshake is a victory, even as the building burns down behind him. But the betrayal cuts deeper than commerce. It is existential. Japan is pissed. And why wouldn't they be? When China's top ambassadors are publicly using rhetoric that belongs in the Middle Ages, saying they want to cut off the head and behead Prime Minister Takahashi, the United States basically did nothing. Silence. A deafening silence from the White House while a Democratic leader was threatened with assassination by a totalitarian regime. Finally, after weeks of paralyzing inaction, the United States sent a single plane over on a Thursday, a B-52, a symbol of a bygone era, sent to say, "All right, Japan, we hear you." But it was too little and it was far too late. It took weeks. In that time, Japan had already begun frantically building up its military, realizing that the American cavalry was not coming. Let me take you through the timeline of this disaster, because the details matter. A few weeks back, Japan stood up. They said, "Look, if China invades Taiwan, we may have to act to protect Taiwan." This was a brave assertion of collective security, to which China immediately responded with aggression, saying, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, are you threatening China?" And then the call happened. Xi Jinping called up Trump. He didn't ask. He demanded. He said, "You got to tell your friend, Prime Minister Takahashi, to shut up and watch her mouth. She can't say things like that to China." Now, in a sane world, an American president would have stood by his ally. Prime Minister Takahashi thought that Donald Trump was going to have her back. You would think it would be the United States' ironclad position that we are going to protect Taiwan, even with our policy of strategic ambiguity, but that is not what happened. Trump basically called Prime Minister Takahashi and told her that she and Japan need to be quiet. He acted as the enforcer for Beijing's censorship. He told them to stop saying these things about China. The result was immediate. Japan immediately started building up its military because they realized, okay, I guess we got to protect ourselves right now. They looked at Washington and saw a void. We heard from Japan's defense minister over the past weeks, and the panic is real. Following this American capitulation, China started doing things like locking onto Japan airplanes in Japanese airspace with Chinese radars. Do you understand what that means? Locking a fire control radar is the last step before a missile launch. It is a death threat. Japan issued formal complaints, screaming into the void, "Wait, you're locking onto our planes? You're acting like you're going to shoot them down?" Japan expressed grave concern after China deployed over 100 vessels across the East Asian waters just in the past week. This was the largest maritime show of force to date by China. And while the Japanese defense minister lodged complaints about China locking onto the radar systems of Japanese fighter jets, while Japanese pilots were scrambling to monitor Chinese and Russian Air Force joint patrols right off its coast, the United States remained mostly silent. This is the death of credibility. This is how an empire dies, not with a bang, but with a busy signal. The theater of war has shifted, and while the American public is distracted by the circus of domestic politics, the foundations of global order are being dynamited in the dark. The situation in the East China Sea is not just a series of isolated incidents, it is a coordinated siege facilitated by American incompetence. As Japan was telling NATO, "Hey, you got to do something," begging for the Western alliance to pay attention to the gathering storm, we learned a terrifying truth. We learned that the U.S. is working on its own secret plan, and this plan is not to strengthen NATO, it is not to bolster the G7, it is a plan with Russia and China to create a counter to the G7 and to NATO. Donald Trump reportedly considers this new alignment to be his nuclear five. It is a chilling vision of the world, a directory of nuclear-armed bullies deciding the fate of the planet. And in this vision, maybe Japan would be in it, maybe not, it is entirely transactional. But it would be led by Russia, China, and the US. Notably, you wouldn't have the UK and France in there. The democracies of Europe are being cast aside for the autocracies of the East. This is a complete realignment of American foreign policy, away from democratic values and toward raw, brutal power. All the while, Donald Trump is giving China everything they want. I mean, anytime Xi Jinping calls, it seems like we're giving. The dynamic is one of tribute, not negotiation. And China hasn't even made good on any of the things that Trump said they were going to do. Let's look at the agricultural sector, the backbone of the American heartland that Trump claims to represent. He claimed victory on soybeans. But look at the numbers. In 2024, they shut down buying our soybeans. They bought 27 million metric tons previously. This year, even after Trump said, "All right, we talked. We're cool," the numbers are catastrophic. Maybe at the most, it's 5 million metric tons. Some reputable analysts say it's closer to 1 million metric tons of soybeans. In any event, it is like 20 million metric tons less than what was being bought under former President Biden. The American farmer is being bankrupted to pay for Trump's vanity, and the media is largely silent. Furthermore, China still maintains strict export controls over their rare earth elements. These are the minerals required to build everything from electric cars to guided missiles. Companies in the United States that have any affiliation with the military still struggle to get some of those rare earths unless they basically beg China. We have placed our supply chain in the hands of our adversary. And then when Donald Trump says, "All right, Xi, what do you want?" the answer is chillingly specific. "We want the H200 AI chips that Nvidia is doing." And Trump's response, "All right, we'll give it to you." He hands over the keys to the future. And rather than say, "Thank you," even Xi Jinping is dismissive. He says, "Okay, we'll take some of them, but we got to protect Huawei and our internal businesses. So we're just going to take your technology and give it to Huawei so they can accelerate their program quicker." They are openly stating their intent to reverse engineer our technology to defeat us, and we are selling it to them with a bow on top. Just this is all going on right now. I think it's not getting any attention that it deserves. We are sleepwalking into a catastrophe. And you have lots of countries in that region that are kind of developing a war footing. I should mention, too, that you had Prime Minister Modi of India just meeting with Putin recently as well. "Delighted to welcome my friend President Putin to India," Modi said. "Looking forward to our interactions later this evening and tomorrow." Why is the world's largest democracy cozying up to Russia? Because the United States has isolated itself. We have screwed over our traditional allies in Europe. I don't even think they are allies anymore after what Trump did to them. He put out a national security strategy that basically attacks European sovereignty and says that basically we're doing regime change in Europe and that it's part of the sphere of influence of Russia. You have all these other countries meeting with each other at the expense of the US, who is getting much weaker. The vacuum we left is being filled by a new axis of power. I want to bring in the perspective of Democratic Congresswoman Sidney Kleiger-Dove here, because she rightly pointed out massive seismic changes happening in the past few hours. These aren't slow shifts. These are massive shifts happening in real time. This is about world domination. You have superpowers battling to control the world, and right now you control the world when you control the computers. When you are making the most powerful and technologically advanced chips, you are able to control defense, you are able to control how things get designed, you can probably control how people's votes get counted, and we are selling that control for pennies on the dollar. We have reached a point in our history where national security is no longer a sacred duty, but a commodity to be traded on the open market. The corruption is so brazen, so transparent, that it defies the imagination of political satirists. We are witnessing the sale of the American safety net. There used to be a time when we were trying to play nice with different parts of the world in order to keep the peace. Now you have a president who is getting in bed with some of our biggest, strongest adversaries and making them even stronger. We are feeding the beast that wants to devour us. So you talked about these chips. Let's be very clear about what we are discussing. We are not talking about nacho chips. We are not talking about potato chips. We are talking about the most advanced computing chips around. These are the brains of data centers. Think about the movies, like Mission Impossible, where the hero has to break into a mega computer hub to save the world because the chips controlling it have been compromised by the super baddies. That is no longer fiction. What's happening now is that Trump is actually selling those specific chips to the super baddies in the world, or at the very least to our frenemies. A little context is necessary. When Biden was president, he put together a very comprehensive and, in fact, very restrictive plan around giving and selling these chips to countries around the world. It was a strategy of containment. Republicans were squawking at the time. It was like going to the zoo. They were shouting, well, hey, Biden, you're not doing enough. You're not protecting our national security. Oh my goodness, you're too old. And Biden responded by putting together a really robust plan because he didn't trust these people in other parts of the world. Fast forward to Donald Trump coming into the White House, and he's selling these things like you sell Snickers on a street corner. It is a fire sale of state secrets. In May, he went to the Middle East and he sold our chips to the UAE and to the Saudis, okay? And then a couple of months later, there was an announcement that the Saudis had invested about $2 billion into a crypto company run by Jared Kushner and the Trumps. Connect the dots. And then a couple of months later, this deal is announced about these chips going to Saudi Arabia. And just recently, Donald Trump announced another deal about chips going to China. Now let's also remember that in January, when this president had his inauguration, who was sitting on the stage with him? All of these AI tech companies. Their goal is to design and sell their chips. Their goals are not to protect our national security. They may say they care about that, but their number one goal is to be a computing superpower, and whoever buys their chips buys them. So we have a president who is essentially selling our most powerful, most prized asset, these chips that we designed, to countries that are out to get us. And here's the kicker. He is doing it for a fee. Trump is getting a commission on selling away our national security. The question then is, well, are we getting anything in return? I mean, he says we're going to get 25%. In a social media post, he explicitly said we're going to be getting $25% sign. It's unclear what he's even talking about. 25% of what? Is it a kickback? Is it a tariff? Or is it a bribe? But even looking at the Chinese reaction, they did not say, oh yes, thank you, flood the market with your chips. They smartly said, great, we'll take your technology, but we've got our own companies that are competing with you. One of them is Huawei. They were expecting maybe 2028 or 2030 to roll out their own versions, but this sale will supercharge their timeline. They say, we'll take some of them. You want us to pay you 25%? Okay, we'll buy 5 of them, and then we'll manufacture our own and checkmate. It feels like the morning after a bad night out. You wake up, there are some dollars on the table, maybe you got a kiss, but you've lost your dignity and your future. We have sold China the second most powerful chip around. This is not a generic brand. This is the name brand. And of course, these Republicans are now silent. There have been no public briefings on these deals, the terms of the deals, or the consequences for violating the deals. We have very vague assurances and no consequences if they do something bad. Intelligence reports suggest that when the UAE got some of our chips, they actually gave them to China, and China was using them to build super missiles. This is catastrophic. And we haven't even sold them to U.S. companies in those countries. We're actually selling these chips directly to the sovereign nations. The United States actually does have an auditing agency that monitors where these chips go, but it is under-resourced, and we don't have enough money because we're not getting it from Donald Trump to make sure that we have enough people scouring the world. We are essentially taking the word of our haters that they won't kill us with the weapons we just sold them. We are witnessing a global humiliation ritual. The United States is not just losing influence, it is becoming a punchline in the halls of power from Beijing to Moscow. Real questions need to be asked. Who is getting the 25%? Is it going to build a ballroom? Is it going into the pocket of a trust fund owned by Trump? Is it going to feed hungry children who didn't get SNAP benefits during the shutdown? There is no information. When all of this came out, there was a New York Times report that said, hey, 5 alarms, shady, corrupt president. There were bills authored to investigate this quid pro quo, bills that said no 25% commission, no fee for sale on our national security. And do you know what happened? No Republicans supported either of those bills. So when you hear a Republican talk about being tough on China, you should give them a crazy look in the eye and say, you are shady and you are talking out of both sides of your mouth. Look at the airspace incident. When the president of Taiwan needed to temporarily use U.S. airspace on a trip to Central America, the U.S. under the Trump regime denied the guy the ability to even fly through the airspace because Xi Jinping called and said, can't use your airspace. That was a test. Xi Jinping was asking, how much can I push? And the answer was, you own us. You control us with soybeans and rare earth elements. Biden had a deck of cards. He had relationships with Europe, Canada, Australia, Japan, and South Korea. When China would do something, the U.S. would bring in the allies for a trilateral response. We were doing things to check them. With Trump, he seems so thirsty. He needs this meeting with Xi Jinping so badly, and Xi knows it. It's like watching a dysfunctional romantic relationship where everyone just needs to get out. China has been thirsty for Taiwan for a really long time. We had the Quad, a little arrangement with Australia and Japan to protect the waters. Now China is still thirsty, and Japan is asking, now, what will happen to our agreement? And Donald Trump is effectively saying, I hate to tell you, but I'm getting punked. Republicans are getting punked by Donald Trump. China is punking Trump. And now Modi and India are saying, okay, boo, I'm going to take all of my people and my tech savvy, and I'm going to go kick it with China and Russia, and the three of us are going to punk you, Donald Trump. And Trump says, okay, but I want to be friends with you all because you act like dictators. It is a humiliation. Where are the strong leaders? Where are the people who won't get punked? If a real leader were president, they would say, I am not selling you the chips. I am not giving you our national security. I am not giving you my people's data. I am not allowing you to create a supercomputer that will take over the world. Trump is not doing any of that. Instead, he brings the chief of staff of Pakistan's military into the Oval Office. Why? Because Pakistan gave money to the World Liberty Financial Crypto Company of Donald Trump and his family. We gave the extra FU to India so that the Pakistan Crypto Fund could profit. Trump then claims he stopped the Indian-Pakistan war. Modi looks at this and says, screw you, you didn't do it. We did it. You look stupid to pretend you had anything to do with this. When we do these fake peace deal stunts, countries like China and Malaysia know that Donald Trump had nothing to do with it. Trump swoops in, looks like a stupid, weak person, and when it falls apart, he takes the blame. It is a humiliation ritual everywhere. And no one in our corporate media talks about this. This is the most important stuff screwing America for generations. I don't like getting played. And the United States right now is getting played because you have a weak president who is much more interested in being applauded than in doing the work. Folks who come here from all around the world, who believe in U.S. values and want to help us be innovative, no longer feel connected to our country. That brain power, that innovation, the people who make computers and ideas are going to other countries because those countries say, I now have Donald Trump under the thumb of my hand. You have a president who is selling your data and national security to countries that want to do us harm, and in exchange, he is getting money, and we don't know where that money is going. If we are here with an isolationist policy, only thinking about what's happening in America, ICE raids, taking away health care, making us stupider, poorer, and sicker, while the rest of the world works together to destroy us, then we are screwed. We are getting screwed from both sides, from enemies we strengthened and friends we betrayed. This is the end of the American era, sold off for a 25% commission. The corporate media will not tell you this story. They are part of the machinery of silence, but we are not. If you refuse to be blind to this collapse, if you demand the truth that the corporate state hides, then you must stay here. Join this channel, subscribe to the resistance against the dying of the light. Do not look away.